My name is Julian Harvie, and I've just got back from running 210-kilometre ultramarathon across the Namibian desert. We were dealing with salt, sand, sweat, blood and tears. I was also lucky enough to be running with the Z50II before it had even been released, taking stills and vlogging for the first time ever.
Marketing is easy, vlogging is hard.
Julian, welcome back. Hopefully you recovered well. It's great to have you here. And one of the things that you didn't talk about in the introduction is that you are an ultramarathon runner and you've gone through this incredible experience, but you also happen to be the marketing director at Nikon as well at the same time, right? So it's kind of your two worlds colliding together. And I'd love to just ask you some questions about the experience you had with the Z52 whilst running an ultramarathon at the same time.
Thanks, Ricci. Yeah, it's exactly right. It's two worlds colliding. And it did really feel like that last week. I've run a few ultramarathons. It's a slightly mad passion of mine, but to be able to bring a second massive passion of mine to that and take this camera out with me was really special. It was really cool. Knowing that completely coincidentally, the timing was going to work out perfectly for me to be able to take this brand new camera out. And I was so excited to be able to do that. I was incredibly grateful that it happened to be a Z52 and not a Z9. So that size and weight issue is something that's kind of going around your head a lot. You're thinking about it a lot of the time. And that extra 500 grams or so, like it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. What did make a difference is when I had it out and if I was running for a few kilometers between checkpoints is the ergonomics. So this grip being as deep as it is, it does probably add a little bit of weight, but actually I could carry that down by my side like this or like this sometimes for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers without minding at all. And that made a massive difference. And the cool thing about running, particularly on trail, is that you're often traveling to places that are inaccessible by any other mode of transport. So you're seeing things that other people can't see. And I've always taken a phone before because it's always struck me as what everybody else does and they're light and you can, it seems like the sensible option. I was blown away by how straightforward it was to take this camera out with me. I can pretty much guarantee that there are runners who will have taken photos on their smartphones that they can feel really proud of as, documentation of the incredible run that they've done. But there are some photos on here that I have been able to make with at least some degree of care and thought, in spite of my brain being all over the place, but also with a camera that made that quite straightforward. And so these are photos that, I'm pretty sure I'm going to print a few of them.
So you almost feel like it was definitely worth the risk versus reward.
100%. I think, and I was genuinely, I wasn't sure whether that was going to be true or not.
Yeah.
It is undoubtedly a heavier, kind of slightly bulkier piece of kit than a smartphone. But what you get out of that is an image quality and ability to control what you're doing when you're taking a photo that means I certainly felt like I was making an image rather than snapping away at something. The psychology for me of feeling like you are creating a piece of art, you are documenting something not just for a record, but for something that you do want to print and that you do want to put on your wall. And, with the image quality this good, you can actually print quite big as well if you wanted to. That felt so special to know I had that locked up on that memory card, There were a few other things that I loved about this camera. It's so bright and so harsh, the light, that trying to shoot with just a screen is practically like shooting blind. But this thing, having an EVF as a starting point makes a huge difference. But also having an EVF as bright as it is, I was actually really blown away by how good that quality was. Certainly things like the vari-angle screen, if I was trying to shoot low, so a couple of shots I quite like of shooting, runners' feet as they're going up through the dust, like that was really cool to be able to kind of shoot that. And again, these ergonomics mean that shooting like this is just so easy. I was running along like this, just going bang, 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 bang. The other thing that's really cool about this is because of it having the same brain in it as our flagship cameras, I could rely on the autofocus actually delivering a shot. There's dust, there's light coming in all sorts of weird places. Being able to do that and trust that the camera was going to hit it. And admittedly, when I first got it out, I was like, I have no idea if this is going to work. And then you review it and you see it's doing it. It's really recording it. The best road test of this with that XP7 processor is just shooting with the thing. That really blew me away as somebody who joined Nikon about 1 month after the Z50 launch.
Yeah.
And I remember testing that camera going, this is cool. It's night and day,
Yeah.
that focusing power, night and day.
A couple of things you mentioned there around dust, sun cream, sweat, water. Is that something where you have like the grip, you have the physical controls? It just makes it easier than if you're trying to use a phone or a touchscreen or something, right?
I mean, particularly with wet, you know, not only are you really quite sweaty, pretty much the whole time, you're also carrying, you've got 3 liters of water on you most of the time. So I had 2 500s here that used to just sort of leak everywhere, and a bladder with a hose pipe. Most of the runners getting their smartphones out at one point or another were putting them back in their pockets going, I can't be arsed with this.
Yeah.
Because there was sun cream, there was sweat, there was, you know, dust going on this, whatever. Now, of course, this has a really decent touchscreen, but actually the physical dials made it really straightforward just to be like, I know I'm going to get this photo.
You mentioned about how you've never done that vlogging aspect before. Were you nervous about that? Was that something that was really new to you?
You're nervous.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to try vlogging for a while. It felt quite scary.
Yeah.
You know, flicking that switch feels quite, it just feels like a brand new thing. And I think before you do it, the barriers to entry feel quite insurmountable. But also there's some really nice things going on in the Z52, not just the variable screen so you can really see yourself and know what's going on, but it's also got a record lamp. So if you've never done it before, you know when you're on. It also counts you down when you're vlogging. That's so nice. That's such a nice feature. It's like having a mini director in your hand. Yeah. And then that autofocus like does the same thing all over again. You can just be like this, and it's just like it's got you on the eye, and that makes the whole thing incredibly straightforward.
We've talking about the camera body that you took quite a bit, but I'd also just like to touch on some of the lenses that you took with you, because I imagine they'd also need to be small, lightweight, and easy to carry, right?
Yeah. So the lens that basically lived on the camera was this, which is basically the kit lens, the DX16-50 f3.5 to 6.3. It was really nice having a zoom lens when you're cutting about and running, because it means you don't have to run further than you need to. So this kind of lived on it most of the time. I also took the DX24 1.7. What I did use this for was shooting the night sky. So 24 is wide enough that you get a lot in, but obviously 1.7 gives you so much more to play with than something at 3.5. I also took the 18 to 140, another DX lens. And that I kind of thought was a complete sort of overkill right up until the last day, because we had some amazing sightings of white rhino, elephant, a few other things like springbok and some birds and stuff. And having the extra reach of the 180 was great. But also it sort of reinforced to me that when I could focus a little bit more on photography rather than on running, how awesome to have that camera rather than what my brother was doing, which was getting a smartphone out and going.
Is your brother now as interested in photography as you are, or did that not pass over?
But James and I went out and, you know, he had his head torch and I was like, let's see what we can do with this. And just there's one shot I absolutely love of him pointing his head torch up into the night sky, and there's the strip of Milky Way right there. And even straight out of camera, even the JPEG, even before I've edited it, it's epic. That's got to be what it's all about to some extent, right?
Do you think that's the best image of your trip, or do you have a couple of other favorites?
So from memory, there are a few early morning on day 2 when we were running through this very steep rocky valley, and the light was streaming through 2 mountains that were separated. So you had this amazing band of light. It's like Little Runner, giant landscape. And there are a few of those photos that I think are going to come out and look pretty epic. There's also some cool shots, I think, where I'm just kind of sneaking up on people behind them. So they're running ahead of me. And you've got, particularly if the sun is in front of them, these huge, long, sort of cowboy-esque shadows coming through them and shooting low up at that.
Well, thank you so much, Julian, and talking me through your experiences in Namibia and teaching me a little bit more about an ultramarathon. And just to hear your experience with the Z52 and you being one of the first people to use it has been incredibly insightful. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks.